It is the Wednesday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Post-Gazette, joined by Christopher Carter, our Steelers insider, talking about the Steelers' preseason finale against the Carolina Panthers. A lot more starters expected to play. Only Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, TJ Watt, and Cam Hayward were on Coach Mike Tomlin's list of guys who we won't see. So we're going to be talking about the people we're excited to see that we haven't seen in this preseason action so far. Before we get into that, I want to thank our sponsor. It's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci, Pittsburgh's mesothelioma and asbestos attorneys, standing up for victims of mesothelioma and asbestos cancers. They have over 85 years of experience, and they know how to uncover the truth. They have the experience you need, the commitment your family deserves, and they've recovered millions for individuals affected by mesothelioma and other cancers due to asbestos exposure. Call them toll-free at 1-877-227-6558 and visit them online at sdklaw.com. Chris, let's talk about those guys who will be playing in this game. The Steelers are 4.5-point favorites against the Panthers, according to our friends at FanDuel. Who are you most excited to see that we haven't already? I guess I'll kick it off and say Jonnu Smith, and not necessarily because I expect him to have X catches for X yards. I don't really care about what the final stat line is. I don't care if he catches a ball really at all. I want to see where he's lining up, how they use him, and how they plan to deploy this guy who has a versatile skill set at that tight end position.
Look, Jonnu Smith's a talent that when he was brought to the Steelers, it kind of questioned, like, okay, do they need to go get a wide receiver too? Because he plays like a wide receiver at the tight end position. And so we haven't really seen him much in practice lately. We haven't seen him in the preseason. If he was to play and you see him get going, that certainly would be very interesting. And as well as Pat Freiermuth, who also hasn't played in the preseason. So seeing the Steelers' top two tight ends, where Darnell Washington's kind of been that guy, that certainly is something you want to see there. And I think that would be interesting to see. You know, Mike Tomlin has been content with, I think, Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf enough to say, like, hey, we don't need to see those guys. We need to see other people get their work in. I think it'll be interesting to see how do the tight ends work in this offense, because, you know, for years, I thought the tight end position has been underused by the Steelers, you know, whether it was just Darnell Washington, like even before he was like becoming a better route runner the way that he is now. I thought Darnell Washington, they were just simply like, hey, when you're inside the 5, just say, hey, Darnell, we're going to put you at tight end. We're going to motion you out to the sideline, and you're just going to run a fade and just box out your guy. We're going to throw it up as high as we can. You just go up and get that thing, big guy. And I feel like they haven't done that. So, I do wonder if there's going to be some extra usage of the tight end. So that's a good pick by you. I'm interested because Mike Tomlin kind of indicated that, like, he kind of wants to see the cornerback room. And, you know, there's been a lot of confidence expressed about Jalen Ramsey, about Darius Slay, about Joey Porter Jr., and them as three as a unit. But we haven't seen them in training camp, and they seemed content with it. But Mike Tomlin did not put them on the list on players who he would have to see. And he kind of said he wanted to see the cohesion of this unit. And he said it's not about needing to see if they're good enough or things like that, but there's extra levels of communication and higher level things that they're doing that I think that Mike Tomlin wants to see happen in real time against, you know, what is I think an athletic and talented receiving core. Now, David Canales, the Panthers coach, has since said they're not going to play their starters. So it's very possible you don't see those guys. But if you do, I've seen Jalen Ramsey and Joey Porter and Darius Slay dominate in Steelers practice. I didn't see them dominate the Bucs in the joint practice when they were there. But granted, as I asked Teryl Austin, first I asked Emeka Egbuka after that practice, and he said, like, they were playing a lot of zone, which, like, they're not going to play a lot of zone when they're, like, playing against receivers they respect this year. They're going to run a lot of man. When I asked Teryl Austin about that, he's like, yeah, I'm not calling like what we're going to actually play in a game in a joint practice. I'm calling different things just to see, hey, if I put these guys in these situations, how do they respond? And so, I think that there's parts that you got to take practices and preseason games at just like okay, we can value this and the effort they're putting in here, but let's understand that there's going to be a lot more that you put it. Like, Jalen Ramsey is a big student of the game. He loves studying his opponent, preparing for that. None of that's happening right now. He's not studying what you want to do, which foot you want to use first when you get off the ball, which way you want to break, the side of the field that you feel the most comfortable winning, the route that you feel the most comfortable winning on first, second, or third down. All those type of things go out the window. And so that's where I think maybe Mike Tomlin just wants to see like, hey, let's get a look at just how these guys look at in a game for maybe a drive or two and get out. But I am intrigued if we do get to see that in this preseason game.
Chris, yeah, I wanted to pull out that thread a little bit because you mentioned the joint practice with the Bucs. Brandon Eccles was talking about communication after that. Jalen Ramsey was talking about that yesterday in his comments with reporters. I think a lot of Steelers fans hear the word communication and flash back to the end of last season and start to say, oh no, are they having the same issues they were having at the end of last season? I talked to Jason Mackey about this last week on our show. He said he thinks it's different. It's not a continuation of that. It's just a matter of new guys coming together in a defense and kind of figuring things out early on. Is that your read as well? That they're working on the communication, but it's not the same as the communication last year?
Yeah, it's different because, like, for example, the Mike Evans touchdown that Emeka Egbuka told us about, the Steelers were in a zone in that play where Jalen Ramsey was lined up over top of him, but Jalen Ramsey didn't like run, pinch him into the safety. And I thought that I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to attack that play. But I guess, and then that's why I asked like Teryl Austin, like, hey, what, was there a reason for the zones? And it's like, yeah, they're not going to go for all the things that they're trying to go for to win. He's like, what they're doing is they're experimenting with certain things. Like I asked Mike Tomlin about the offensive line and why the first team offensive line. And I wrote about this for this morning in the Post-Gazette, why the offensive line has only run 5 times with the first team offensive line through 2 preseason games. And, I talked about, hey, like, is this about gathering other data? And he was like, yes, we're gathering other data. So I think sometimes it's about, there's a confidence that like, hey, if these guys, they check these boxes for us in practice, we'll see that develop during the season. There's these other things that we got to see, that we got to just take in and see how do they respond to these moments, so we can continue to expand what we can trust to call or know not to call as the season goes along. And I'll also point this out too, like with the 2-minute drill that, was so terrible and the Buccaneers were so good. There were about 2 or 3 plays where Baker Mayfield was going to get sacked, and then like Nick Herbig or TJ Watt would just pull up because like, it's joint practice. You're not trying to hit the other team's quarterback. And so like there were a few plays that they would not have won on the 2-minute drill if it was that. So between that and not calling defense the way they would in a real game, I think that there's some grace that can be offered to the Steelers secondary. But again, still, I think there's that thing where you're talking about like, is it the same as communications? I don't think so, because I think that they're right now they're testing things out, and I don't see like, there's always going to be like a last second, like, hey, they're doing this, let's get there. But the massive breakdowns I saw from guys like Cam Sutton, Beanie Bishop at times, they're just not happening when Jalen Ramsey, Porter, Slay, Elliott, Clark, and Thornhill on the field. That's not what's going on.
Chris, I wanted to ask you about a couple other guys as well. We're expecting to see some Jaylen Warren behind this first team offensive line. You mentioned that they've been gathering other data, things like that. Are you expecting to get any kind of feel for how this running game is actually going to perform when the lights go on in this final preseason game? Or is Jaylen Warren just such a straightforward one-cut type of runner that you know what you're getting from him, and it's a question of whether this offensive line is going to figure things out regardless of who's behind them in the backfield?
Yeah, I wrote about that for this morning in the Post-Gazette, talking about analysis of the run game. Arthur Smith said, when I asked him about what, why they haven't called more run plays in the preseason, he said, they want to be brilliant in the basics before they kind of expand what they call. And when I looked at those 5 run plays for the first team offensive line, a lot of them were like wide zones, like just very basic, like, hey, run a zone blocking scheme, stretch the field, let our running backs kind of run and pick what hole they want to attack. But in practice, I've seen in training camp, I was seeing them. Broderick Jones was pulling up into the middle part of the line and being a lead blocker. I saw this guy move here, that guy move there. And Arthur Smith, said that they are one of the more athletic offensive lines, whereas Brian Batko pointed out, about a month ago, that they have one of the smallest offensive lines, and that's very true. But at the same time, they also have one of the more athletic, because these guys can all move in all 5 positions. That's something Arthur Smith noted. He's like, all 5 guys can pull and hit in space and play well in space. And he's like, that's something that we're going to use. You haven't seen any plays called in preseason that take advantage of that. And I think part of it is they want to get these basics down, but they also don't want to tip their hand to say like, hey, we're not going to show our bread and butter in, mid-August. We're going to try to develop things. And then when we start to develop things in the regular season, then you'll have to start guessing what we're doing. But I think the run game with Jaylen Warren, I think there's a quiet confidence that maybe it's going to work out this year. Even though the Steelers rushing offense has not been an efficient unit since maybe 2016 when Le'Veon Bell was around. And that's why I kind of pushed the questions to Arthur Smith and the questions to Mike Tomlin, because as coaches, Arthur Smith wasn't around for that, but Mike Tomlin was. But Mike Tomlin seems to be really confident that this group's going to figure it out. And I think that could be a big story of the season, is if this run game matures and becomes a serious threat, it will, I think, Mike Tomlin's calmness and not needing to hyper press this in the early part of the preseason and early part of the season, will be kind of seen as a wise move. But if this run game doesn't develop, it's going to be a question that I have going back at the end of the season, being like, okay, Mike, when I was asking you back in August, pressing this for more, trying to get more out of this run game, and you said like you guys are collecting other data, why weren't you collecting this data? And I think those are one of those reasonable questions that I think you can ask of Mike Tomlin. But again, we got to see how the season plays out and how things move forward.
Patrick Queen's another name that I think a lot of fans are looking forward to seeing some pressure on him going into the season, considering the way last season ended. What have you seen from him during the camp period, and your expectations for that to translate as we get into some preseason action with him?
I think one thing that's really going to help Patrick Queen this year is how clean the linebackers are being kept, at least in practice in those first 2 preseason games. And I wrote about this a bit with Derek Harmon. In the game against the Ravens, the linebackers are just getting chewed up by the Ravens offensive line. Tyler Linderbaum on that line did a great job just double teaming guys out the hole, chipping to the backers, and you just saw very few plays where they were able to diagnose the play, charge into the backfield, and make the stop. But you're seeing that a lot more this year, just with those young guys up. Derek Harmon being able to take on double teams, Keanu Benton being better at taking on double teams. Y.A. Black, when he's in, being able to do that. And I think that plays right into Patrick Queen being given more abilities to read the play, diagnose what's going on, and attack or, get to where he feels he needs to get to maintain what the defense is doing. And if they're able to do that, then that allows them to be so much more aggressive in a lot of different ways. I think the Steelers have a good rotation of linebacker. This might be the best rotation of inside linebacker the Steelers have had since maybe James Ferrier, Larry Foote, and Lawrence Timmons. And I mean, like, that's the late 2000s right there when they drafted Lawrence Timmons and kept those 2 guys around. But Patrick Queen is a sideline to sideline. I can cover, I can hit, I can lead type of linebacker. Payton Wilson looks like that too. The thing is, when they they signed Cole Holcomb a few years back before he got injured for 2 whole seasons, and they had to go get a Queen and a Wilson. Cole Holcomb was supposed to be that guy. So now you have 3 dudes who kind of fit that profile, and you can rotate them at a position where you at most need 2 on the field at the same time. So I do want to see what Patrick Queen looks like with these guys, because I think that he's the best of them, at least right now. I think Payton Wilson's ceiling might be a bit higher if he stays healthy for long enough and continues to develop his skills and fundamentals. But if Patrick Queen comes in this year, he could be a Pro Bowl type guy behind this defensive front if he's kept clean and they are able to win against the run on the early downs. And then you could also tee up these guys for being pass rushers on 3rd downs where they can blitz. And I think that's honestly where this linebacker unit could be very, very dangerous, is when they're firing off the ball and you're able to orchestrate some one-on-ones with running backs, and the Steelers are running press coverage so that the quarterbacks can't just let go of the ball in 2 seconds. There could be some interesting plays for these guys to be made.
All right, Chris. Well, thanks for your insight. We're looking forward to seeing how that game plays out on Thursday. So please stay tuned to the channel. We'll have reaction on maybe Thursday night and certainly Friday morning. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm, and we'll talk to you again next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.